En esta entrevista le presento a una persona en la cual se le atribuye su rol y trabajo como artista, también por hacer el cómic The Dark House. Antes de que comience la entrevista, abajo en los comentarios le dejaré los minutos de cada pregunta que se ha hecho en la entrevista. Sin nada más que decir, que comience la entrevista.
How did you know the Loud House? The very first time I saw the Loud House was pretty much the pilot that has been online. That's when I first saw it, and I actually liked the concept of it a little bit. I admit the story wasn't as interesting, but I did actually find the characters to be interesting from the very beginning. So yeah, I found, obviously from online, I saw it from the very beginning. I am a big fan of animation, Western animation mostly. I mean, anime has its own category and its own story, but for the most part, I do like cartoons, and I've been drawing all kinds of TV shows for a very long time, and The Loud House, I picked it up from the very beginning. Although things were a little bit different back then, it appeared at a different phase of my life, and so it was special in its own way. I did not exactly see it in a critical way at the time, so I guess it was pure audience, pure view from the audience on the show, and as I said, I did like the art style, and I guess that's about it. As soon as the show was released, I saw the very first episode, and so on, and I actually liked it a lot at the beginning. Of course, later on things changed, but we'll answer that maybe some other time. What fandom personalities have inspired you? Oh man, I was never really part of the fandom at all, actually. I was just an individual online, just doing his own thing. I did have some friends online, but I wouldn't call them, the fandom or part of the fandom. Even to this point, I don't think I am part of the fandom. Although I did see my fair share of what they're doing, it's just that it didn't really matter much to me. So, did any of them inspire me? No, not at all. Although I have to say recently I did find some artists who draw things from the Loud House, and their artworks are very beautiful. And some of them are famous artists, some of them not so much. And I found their works interesting, but I wouldn't say that it did inspire me. That's a completely different thing for me. When it comes to inspiration, it doesn't come exactly from the Loud House fandom. There's a different source, but if I have to say what inspired me, it's not necessarily related to the Loud House. I think the biggest inspiration came to me from, if I have to dig back in the past, I have to say the very first time that I felt inspired was Bleedman Comics, if I have to be specific. I read Grim Tales, like it was my first encounter with Western fandom in general. That's when I first found it, and the very first story from Grim Tales, all the way until the end, I suppose, of the beginning of it, like the part where, I don't remember exactly the numbers of chapters, but basically the story of Grim Jr. and Minnie when they, I call it Minnie, I could be wrong, maybe it's just Minnie. Anyway, their story up until they many turn into a Frankenstein creature. I guess that's one way. Well, zombie or something. All the way until her creation as that. Now, I suppose I did love that part of the story way too much, and there was also the part later on until Mimi, the demon girl, get captured later on, which also was interesting and inspiring. I did actually feel inspired from those stories, like seeing Western characters in a manga setting, manga or anime, whichever you want to call it, kind of a scenario or lifestyle or stuff like that. I enjoyed that a lot. I mean, it's still not exactly as funny as Western animation, but I still liked it. It was great in its own dramatic way, and I guess that's when I felt first inspired. Later on, of course, things moved on to other things like, mangas, and I would go as far as say hentai, but for its own reasons. It's hentai. Now, I have to be honest here. The thing about hentai that makes it a bit more different than manga or anime, well, even though it's technically a category of them. The reason why it's unique is because they have no reason to censor anything. Obviously, it's for adult audience, so they have entertainment for them. But because it's for adult audience, there tend to be very little censorship of it. I mean, there is still censorship, but not that much. So I did actually go as far as, indulge in all kinds of manga and hentai stuff for a long while, and I guess that's where my liking for stories like that came to be. And obviously, the Loud House fandom did also pick up things from manga and hentai as well, which probably inspired many of their works. And I kind of picked up on that immediately. Although the whole thing about the moral standards, now this one is a different story. I have to go into details about that, but this is not what this interview is about, so I'm going to leave that for either the next question or some other time or so. But again, I enjoyed a lot of storytelling in a lot of medias, and their either the realistic interpretation, believable interpretation, whatever you want to call it. I actually loved the storytelling of so many of these comics, TV shows, and so on. And ever since I became a fan of these medias, and just continue to this very day to explore more and more. Sometimes to my own detriment, because there is certain medias that are incredibly troublesome in its own way, but again, that's a different story for another day. What is your favorite drawing style? Well, based on the source of my inspiration, I have to say it's the Bleedman art style. It's the perfect combination between cartoony Western style mixed with manga and anime style. So yeah, it's my favorite actually. There is a lot to talk about in that regard, but I'm not exactly the right guy to analyze the whole thing for you. But they say that an art style does have its own personality as well. When you see something like manga or anime, you tend to see it more of a serious art style. But when you look at Western media, you take it more as comedy or humor or unrealistic, like not even believable in any way. And the Bleedman art style specifically, it tend to have its combination between the two, although it lean a little bit more toward manga than Western art style. But I guess the whole point is that there is that as a fan of Western cartoons, you tend to pick up the main story, the setup for the story, and then see an anime or manga spin on it. So I guess it kind of take that into account. That's how it's work as entertainment. You already know the main story, and so you see a different interpretation of it. Of course, the storytelling here is a key element to determine if it's successful or not. So I'm not gonna say that it's all about the art only. There's still the storytelling. So that is why I have my opinions on the matter. Like, things have changed over time. A lot of things have changed. My opinion on a lot of storytelling has changed, and now I'm a lot more critical of things. So whatever I enjoyed in the past, right now I see it in a lot of different ways. There is some genres that I tend to avoid completely, and same goes to art styles. There are styles that I tend to skew away from, and it's a big topic, very big one. How long does it take you to make a fan art? Well, keep into account that I am an artist for hire. I usually work for my clients more so than I work for myself. Sometimes I draw things for myself, but it's not as often as people think. Sometimes they mistake some of my client requests or commissions as works of my own, but that's just not how things are. A lot of my artworks, the things I make, are for my clients, to their own specific requests and demands. So that tend to play a role in how long it takes me to create an artwork. Now, roughly speaking, depending on how many characters I'm drawing, or the background, or some other details, sometimes even some outfits themselves take a lot of time. If we go something as simple as a single character simply standing and a simple outfit, nothing complicated or so, it take me approximately 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe 3-4 hours to complete it. So something simple could take a long time. I usually draw very slowly, although depending on certain aspects I could draw faster. But I don't think I can ever go below 4 hours. Like, the simplest of drawings take me at least 4 hours, and that's the lowest amount of time I take. If I draw, however, drafts, like sketches alone, like without line art, without coloring, without shading, if I only draw a draft, usually it takes me about 30 minutes. Even if it's a single character, it takes me 30 minutes to finish. Obviously, the more I draw, more characters, more details, obviously it will take much longer. So yeah, it's pretty much it. Again, a lot of my work tend to be for my clients, though, a lot of it. So obviously my clients would want their artworks as soon as possible. It's something they want. It doesn't mean I have problems with it, though. I mean, if it's something my client wants, I draw whatever he wants. Sometimes the client demands some changes or redrawing or something like that. So those obviously make things take a lot more time. And sometimes there's misunderstandings. My client asks for something and I draw something that is not what he meant, or I mistook one word for another. So those things happen, and they make any drawing I make take a lot longer than it's supposed to. On some days, I actually split the drawing into many phases. For an example, usually I start with a sketch phase, where I actually just make a draft, that's when I communicate with my client the most. I keep asking him over and over if this is what he wants, and as soon as the draft completes, I sometimes take a break and wait for the next day to continue the drawing. Obviously, for health reasons, I can't stay on the computer for too long. I have my limits, and therefore some drawings take a few days to be complete. The next phase to me is the line art. As soon as the draft is complete, I have to draw the lines, and the line art actually is probably the most difficult part of the drawing, because I actually have to be very careful with the lines, the perspective, and anatomy, and sometimes even positions of the characters and so on. So when I do the line art, it tends to take the longest time. A full day dedicated just for the line art, and that's probably the most complicated part. The next phase to me is the coloring and shading, although I kind of combine the two, because recently I have been advancing. Like in the past, I used to only draw the colors first, then the shading, but these days I do them both together, coloring and shading. Like I draw one color, then immediately shade it, then draw another color over it, and then shade that color, and so on and so on. So that's usually phase 3 of the drawing. The third phase of it is pretty much take all day as well. Now, if there is a background, specifically something a little bit detailed, it takes its own phase. Like it becomes phase 4 of the background and light effects. They usually come together at the very end of it, and depending on how you look at it, it's its own phase, and it takes a little less than all the other phases. Like if I have to say, like rate them, the most difficult phase is the line art. The second most difficult phase is the coloring, and of course comes next to it is the background and light effects, and finally the easiest phase, which is the sketching. Now that is the way it works for me. So yeah, it's take a lot of effort into drawing what I draw, and obviously because I learned to mimic and try to create my own version of Bleedman art style. For the most part, I follow his instructions, his art style, but sometimes I do my own interpretation of it, although not as often as people think. And it's a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and I wouldn't call myself a professional at this point. I still have a lot more to learn, and maybe someday I'll come up with my own art style, although I already have an iconic one that people recognize me by. But someday I will come up with my own art style, and specifically there is art styles that are a lot easier to draw, a lot faster to draw, and I'm actually planning on picking up on one of them someday. Something very quick to draw, and hopefully it will start a new phase in my life entirely. So far, though, that hasn't happened yet, and we'll see what happens in the future. We'll see where my journey take me, and hopefully by then my drawing speed will improve, and I'll be a lot more professional in my own work. What is your general opinion about the fandom? I never really was a part of it specifically, not really. I mean, I did see it a lot of times, but I was never actually an active member of it at all. I guess it just passed by it many times, but that's it. So my opinion of it is only on the surface level only. Like I only can make judgment only on the surface, but nothing beyond that. I think a lot of people love the Loud House. A lot of people do. A lot of people see the potential in the show. However, a lot of people also left the show sometime after season 2 or 3. They probably saw the massive damage that the show become after the original creator Chris Savino left the show. A lot of people are leaving. However, that doesn't mean that their feelings toward the first season have changed, nor the concept of the Loud House. They actually still love the concept, and they want to explore more and more of it. And that love is probably one of the reasons why the fandom is still active to this day, even though some members, or be it more or a lot or not so much, have left the fandom. I'm sure their feelings toward the show and the concept itself is very strong, and that's why they are still active to this day. There's a lot of members of the fandom who are, perverse, if that's one way if you want to call it. And to me, that doesn't really matter much. I mean, I don't judge people on these matters. Like, as long as they don't harm anyone physically in any way, I don't believe it's okay. Now, emotionally or so, that's a complicated matter. I don't want to discuss it because some people value emotions a lot, some people not so as much. So I don't really want to evaluate on that. But as long as someone is not harmed physically, I think that that anyone is free to do whatever they want with their beliefs, with their ideas. And the whole moral thing is to be debated. There's a lot of things to go through in that. But I don't judge the fandom on these things. And when I see them create their art, whatever they create with it, I pretty much am fine with it. I think that some of what they create is very good, some other not as creative. I've seen a lot of OCs that are based on the Loud House, and I admit there doesn't seem to be much thought put into them. Or maybe the designs are just not good enough. Stories, however, this one is complicated. There is some issues with some stories, such as being unfaithful to the original characters, or unfaithful to the dynamics of the characters. There are things that are more common in some characters, not so common in others. There is some flaws, inconsistency with the personalities and behaviors of the characters. There is inconsistencies, and to me, that's probably one of the biggest damage that a fan of the Loud House could make. You need to be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more faithful to the original material, specifically the ones by Savino himself. Some of the more perverse content could also do the same, actually. Like, even when they create something for adults, it's actually also can be unfaithful to some things as well. Or maybe it take things to the extremes. Either way, I guess it's art anyway, and it could go any direction it wants. I mean, I'm just judging on quality and so on, but that's pretty much it. In fact, I worked closely with one of the fans of the Loud House, and one of my best creations was because of his, should I say, commission. He asked me to draw stuff for the Loud House, and I guess this one is proof that there is some good ideas in the fandom, some really great ones, and it can become great content. Now, again, their faithfulness to the material or their desire to create something new, it can either help their creation or damage it. So it's pretty much a controversy in many ways. Should they be loyal to the original material or not? It's debatable. There is no clear answer on that. But at the same time, it is still interesting to see what they create. And for that, I say that the Loud House fandom It's pretty much a very complicated fandom, that's for sure. I mean, there is also some ideological grounds, some grudges against Chris Savino himself, grudges against his co-workers or so on. There's also the idea that there is some, I guess you could call it left-wing, right-wing ideologies in the fandom. Although I suppose the majority lean left, but you know, it's neither here or there. I'm sure it exists. I don't have evidence of it, but I have a strong feeling that it's in there. I've seen the original show, and specifically the following seasons after midway in season 2, season 3, season 4, things got incredibly left-wing. And without diving deep into politics, it tend to become a problem when people of the right wing, fans who are right wing, can be a bit troubled by the heavy skew to leftist direction, and it can become an infighting in the fandom. So whatever reason they are fighting inside the fandom when it comes to these things, well, it's a very deep ideological problem, and I don't think anyone can reach a stable solution to all of this. So it becomes kind of divided at some point. I pretty much think a lot of those who believe in the right wing in the fandom have already left, or at least the majority of them have left. But some of them are still in there. They have still faith in the show that it can be something meaningful, something that they can relate to, or something that resonates with them. And I believe they have the right to have that. They have the right to do that, at least in their own creation. So without pretty much going way too critical into these things, I think the fandom in general is a lot of creative people, a lot of great artists. Now, maybe the infighting I mentioned is probably in the extreme edges of the fandom, but I did hear a lot of people wondering about certain aspects of the fandom and so on. I heard a lot of great ideas, but at the same time, it seems like the most vocal part of the fandom is probably the minority of it, which is why I mentioned the whole political thing earlier. Nonetheless, I've been observing my share of the my share of the things in here, and I did see some YouTube videos and a lot of people who made comments on both the fandom and the show itself. And one thing for sure, loyalty to the Loud House seems to be good enough to make it into something meaningful to those people. It is. But I would rather if everyone can be able to get along and at least agree that everyone should have their beliefs, ideas, and so on either heard, presented, or kept as it is. It's up to them. I believe everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but there should be some form of tolerance between those people based on ideological grounds, because that's the most important one of them all. So keeping that in mind, the fandom is clearly big enough to have all these ideas in it, and that also includes some much more perverse ideas, as well as much more I guess you could call it normal ideas, or so on. There's many ways to name it. There is the anti-incestual groups, I guess I'm saying it correctly. I'm not saying anyone is right or wrong on this, because those are fictional characters. But as again, everyone is entitled to his opinion. But again, that's pretty much all I can say on the matter. I believe everyone should get along. Well, not should, but just say it would be great if they could. And yeah, that's pretty much what I see from the exterior of the fandom. Just just a lot of great stuff and potential for conflict as well that it's best to be avoided to the best of abilities of the fans. How did you get inspired when making the comic of the Dark House? Well, that's actually, to be exact, the Dark House wasn't my idea at all. It was a commission. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but the story of the Dark House actually come from one of my clients, let's say. You could call them fans or clients, it's up to you. So he approached me one day and he asked me, again, not gonna mention his name, it's gonna be a little bit it's confidential information. But he came to me one day, the creator of the Dark House, the original one. He came to me one day and he commented on how much he liked my drawings of Lincoln, Lucy, and the other characters of the Loud House. And he told me that he have an idea to create a much darker version of the Loud House, one where the characters are, well, I mean, to simplify it, it's kind of a anime, basically dark anime kind of ideas. Like basically the characters are forced into some sort of apocalypse where they are now fighting for their lives and everything like that. The characters are, well, again, it's a complicated story nonetheless. Like the characters are facing the apocalypse and everything changed. The people of the neighborhood are either some of them ran away, some of them stayed in their homes, and so on. I guess you could call it some version of current events where things are somewhat difficult and dangerous and so on. So the Loud House, well, I guess you could call it the Dark House. He told me the story of how they are now confined to their house, and it's leading them to all kinds of problems. Like each one of them have been infused with some sort of magical power or so, and because of that, there is a lot of instability in the house that started the event. Originally, he just wanted to create like his own story, his own interpretation of the Loud House, where the characters are going through their emotional and personal problems in a time of danger and threats and everything. So he talked to me about it and he asked me to draw his own comic of the Dark House. Of course, it was a different phase for me, to be specific. Like me and him, we met at a different time for me specifically. Like although he did change as well, like he actually changed his mind over time, same as me. We met at the time and he asked me to draw the Dark House for him, a comic of it, interpretation of it. And to me, since I'm kind of passive on moral matters, I told him that it's okay, he can ask me anything, and we started working on the Dark House. Of course, I was supposed to be only the artist of the Dark House. I was supposed to be only the artist, but I did have eventually started to use my knowledge of manga, anime, and entertainment in general, ideas, storytelling, and so on. I started to use my own knowledge of things. I started to tell my client that it would be more realistic if the characters did not immediately reach an understanding between them. And that did actually start a bit of a problem. There was some creative differences on these things. My client was not exactly happy with my ideas for the comic to be more artistically appealing. So those things eventually drive him away, sadly enough. Like I admit, maybe I did invade too much. Maybe I had too much interference with the story. But ultimately, he left, and he was not happy with the results. The whole adult thing in the comic, the adult themes and such, incestual and all that. All these things were actually his requests. He's the one who wanted it. I simply told him that in order for these things to work, there need to be some good setup. There need to be some sort of understanding between Lincoln and Lucy, like something to drive them closer together. And it can't be regular stuff. It has to be at least somewhat supernatural or, emotional in some way that would eventually lead to the immoral conclusion of all of it. So that's where we started to have the differences. He wanted something more none, I suppose. Like he didn't want the supernatural thing to affect their emotions or so. And to me, I said that based on the show, like what I observed from the show, like even if they have some sort of trauma or some depression going on, there need to be some sort of ground on the way they feel toward each other. So that's where things in the Dark House started to change. I gave him I worked on it for a while, and me and him, and at first we did agree on a lot of things, but slowly this agreement continued to grow until eventually the Dark House just became what it is, or stopped there. So again, the whole incestual thing, the sexual thing, the whole thing, it's actually what he wanted, what he requested, and I just don't really have any objection on the matter because, well, again, it's fictional characters, it's cartoons, it doesn't really matter. The whole emotional or moral thing is pretty much not important in this case, because the whole thing was intended for adults anyway, and adults can make their own minds. They can make their own moral decisions on these things, so it's up to them really. It's not my job to control other people's thoughts and morals. It's not. It's kind of a disturbing thing when someone wants to dictate other people's morals or so. It become a matter of authoritarian versus libertarian. I lean libertarian. I prefer to be libertarian, although I still have some standards when it comes to some morals, but not when it's fiction. When it's fiction, it's different. I say they can do whatever they want, and I do desire, personally, to explore more and more of the ideologies of people, their beliefs, their perspective of things. That's why I don't have a problem watching, reading anything I believes that I personally don't hold myself. I like to explore. I like stories. I like a lot of things, and I like to explore the most. So that is why I agreed to work on the Dark House. And because I kept having interferences with the story, the original creator, the client of mine, was not happy and eventually just left the project altogether. Keep in mind, it was a different phase when all of that happened. Later on, when I reached a different phase of my life, a different time, you could say. Specifically, I suppose you would call it was 4 years ago, probably, maybe 3. No, it's probably 3. Things changed for me. My entire perspective changed, and right now it's still changing a little bit, but not for the most part. I reached my own conclusion. I did talk to the creator earlier, earlier in December, or maybe it was November. I did talk to him, and he did tell me that he's not angry with me anymore, or so. We did meet again, but he told me that he doesn't want to work on the Dark House anymore. He said that he's not happy with it, and he doesn't want to ever go near it again. So I told him that it's fine, it's his decision. I don't really mind very much. I told him that a lot of people loved the Dark House, the one that we created, and he disavowed that the story is his anymore. He said that since I had some creative interferences in it, that therefore it's not his anymore. He was not happy with that, and well, I don't know what to say. I mean, he's the one who wanted the incestual stuff. I simply added the depth of the story, the personalities and all that. It wasn't my decision to do the incestual things, and it seems like to him that's not the case at all. It's kind of a disagreement between us. I'm not saying he's a bad person or anything. I'm just saying that he's very critical of what is his and what is mine, and that's why I don't think the Dark House will ever be the same anymore. However, there are fans of the Dark House who still approach me, who still ask me questions about it. A lot of people who want me to continue the comic. Now, I can continue it, but if I do, it will skew a little bit away from the original idea. Like instead of just incestual sexual stuff, it will be more character-based, a lot of storytelling. The characters having different reasons for what they do. Like they don't do things for no reason. There is a reason for it. So if I ever to resume the Dark House, it will be me alone, just me working on it. And again, to me, things morally, ideologically or so, things are a little bit different now. And I'm not gonna say which what I hold now ideas. I still believe in freedom of speech, freedom of these things. I still believe in it. So I probably will. I probably can't make it the same as it was before. If my clients, one of my clients did approach me and ask me to continue it, and he even paid me for it. I asked him if he want to continue the incestual sexual direction, and he approved. He said yes, he want to. So even then, I still followed his instructions, what he wanted. I still had my own hand in the storytelling. I still had my own interpretation of their personalities also, such as Lincoln being against what Lucy demands or requests, but she continued to ask for more. And Lincoln being a guy in a family where no one is willing to compromise except for himself, I decided, I believe that Lincoln will try to compromise even his own moral standards for the sake of Lucy, and therefore continue what he's doing, even if he morally and emotionally just uncomfortable with it. So that client, he's still waiting. Actually, he didn't exactly leave. He's still waiting, and he tells me that he still wants the comic to continue, but due to my work, my online jobs and stuff, I to this day I'm yet to resume the comic, and I probably, if anyone is willing to fund it, anyone who's willing to continue the project, probably will be able to convince me to continue the comic. Again, the moral argument here is still standing, and some people will be mad at me, some people will be angry about the whole incestual sexual thing. And to me, it doesn't matter, because life is not safe. Life is not censored. Real life is not. Bad things happen, immoral things happen, and a lot of people disagree on a lot of things. And as long as life itself is uncensored, as long as life itself have its own disagreements, why should art be different? Art is supposed to resonate with people. And if some people believe reality should be this way or that way, why should it be censored? I believe in that standard, and therefore it doesn't matter to me. If someone want to believe in violence, he's free to do so. If someone want to believe in some form of bigotry, it's up to him. I'm not going to say I approve. I'm just saying I understand that it exists, and nothing I say will make it go away. It will always be there. And that is why even cartoons, TV shows, and entertainment that heavily heavily go against my beliefs. I don't believe they should be censored, but I do believe that they themselves have the desire to censor others. That's why I stand against them, not for what they do or their beliefs, but the idea that they are standing against other people having the freedom of speech, and therefore I stand against them. That is why, to me, the Dark House, as controversial and as immoral as people claim it is, I believe as much as they have the right to be angry, other people have the right to enjoy it as well. It is all fiction, after all. And when all said and done, reality, real life, is all that really matters. And to some people, this is not real life, and I agree with them. Will you continue the comic of the Dark House? I mean, I think I will eventually do so, actually. I think I will. However, the reason why the comic hasn't been resumed for a while now is actually various of reasons. One reason is because the last guy who funded the last page wasn't actually the original creator. It was one of my other clients. And sadly, I cannot reach him regularly. I mean, he's told me that he's willing to resume the comic, but due to communication problems, things did not resume for a while. And because I kept getting busy with real life problems problems in my daily life, I ended up just delaying the comic for a very long time. Things are, right now, they are uncertain, unclear. I don't know exactly what will happen next. I don't know what I will go through. Some days I feel badly depressed, other days not as much. Some days I feel very much energetic and happy and joke around a little bit. Art has its own toll on someone, as well as its own demands and requests. So I cannot say exactly when the comic will resume. One thing for sure, though, if someone is willing to fund it, then it will resume, definitely. Right now, there's only one client who's willing to fund the comic. I did actually approach other clients and ask them if they want to fund the comic some more, and they refused. They said that if they are willing to fund anything, it will be their own projects only. So that's why it was only one client standing right now and waiting for the comic to resume. And I cannot contact him regularly. The internet right now is very divided. A lot of websites are now no longer the same. There's a lot of censorship, a lot of ideological problems. Some angry people online who keep causing problems and so on. Heck, maybe even some of the audience right now are interested in causing trouble for me. I'm not exactly surprised of these things. And because of that, my connection with that one particular client is very unstable. We cannot contact each other regularly. One of the biggest problems is that DeviantArt is where my Loud House fandom, well, I guess my connection with the Loud House fandom started. And now that the DeviantArt itself is starting to crash, starting to crumble, a lot of fans, some of them still contact me, but others not as much. And this one particular client, I know him through DeviantArt, so I'm not sure. Like, maybe I can still contact him, but for now it's best if he approach me first and ask me to resume the comic. But even then, he still have to make an appointment. He still may need to register as a client of mine. Well, it's not exactly a complicated process. It's very easy. You still have to do it and go through my many clients who you have to participate with them and finally resume the Dark House comic. So yeah, it's a huge process, complicated and so on. And Not to mention that my own training to draw more manga, more comics and stuff. Like, I still need to train some more. I'm not great with backgrounds yet. I still need to do more and more work on my backgrounds. So yeah, it's a complicated thing, and I don't know exactly when the comic will resume, but I do know that it will. There is a lot of fans who still want it to continue, and well, let's be honest, the Loud House fandom is shrinking, and even if someone eventually asks me to resume it, maybe people will not have the chance to see it before they lose interest in the show, and that is why I'm very much sad about the idea that I might not be able to finish the comic while people are still interested. But if people are interested now and willing to fund the comic, willing to put their money where where their mouth is, I might actually resume the comic. I mean, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, it's just an expression. I'm waiting, sitting, just doing my job, doing my work, trying as best as I can to get through life, both online and in the real world, trying to get through them, and hopefully with the help of everyone, fans of the Loud House, my own fans, friends, even family. With the help of everyone, I might be able to one day complete the Dark House. It won't be the same as before, but at least it will have at least the depth of the characters. Lincoln's uncertainty in many things. Lucy's struggles with both her desires and her own life in many ways. The rest of the characters and their own struggles, their own changes due to the recent events in the story of the Dark House. Yeah, I'm sure that it will be interesting to read either way when that time comes. A lot of things have changed, and I hope that these changes will eventually lead to the comic being completed, if the fans wish so, hopefully. What was it that attracted you to the series? Well, I did answer that a little bit earlier in the other question, but I guess I could simplify it a little bit. The idea that the main character is this smart aleck who's trying to get through life, like he have an actual problem, a serious problem, living in a house full of girls, and he have to get through them. And he's trying to do it in a fun way, like a smart aleck kind of way. He's not the smartest guy, but he still do his best to get through life. Now, all the struggles he had with his family is forcing him to be actually smarter than the average guy, a little bit more sneaky, a little bit more devious, and so on. So I did enjoy that concept, that idea that he have to actually outsmart his sisters. So, well, either that or compromise with them. Both are good, actually. I do like the idea. So that's what I found to be interesting about the show. The art style is very beautiful. Chris Savino did a great job at creating an art style that is both simple but actually appealing to people. He did mention many times, Chris Savino, that the show is inspired a little bit by Charlie Brown. Although, to be honest, it doesn't feel much like Charlie Brown, although the art style can be comical and remind me a little bit of much earlier comics, stuff that are a little bit old. Maybe you recall it from old comics. And it is appealing, very appealing. So, yeah, what attracted me to the show was both the art style and the concept of a boy who tried to survive in a house full of girls. And one other thing that did actually I found very interesting in the show is that in this era, specifically these days, these particular times, or even you could even go to the past and see the same problem. There's a lot of issues with communication between guys and girls, boys and girls, whatever you want to call it, men and women. There's a lot of communication problems, and these things even go as far as between siblings who don't communicate well, who don't understand each other, they don't respect each other in many ways. And I did actually find the potential in the Loud House to address these things, and to some extent they did, to some extent. However, I kind of was, be it, even if you're not political, even if you don't see things from a political lens, you still actually want to see some understanding between people like that. You want some understanding. You want to see your own life, your own personal experiences being presented in some way. You have a problem with girls, you don't talk to them well, or maybe they disrespect you or so, or maybe you respect too much or not enough or so. All of these things could have been presented in the Loud House, and I was looking forward to see every single situation possible, and I did, for the most part, but things skewed politically later on, and that's where I just became too difficult. It was a bit difficult for me to enjoy the show anymore. However, the fans did see the same thing I did. They did see the same problems, they did see the same potential, they saw everything, and they wanted more. They created their own interpretation of the Loud House, their own versions of it, be it moral or immoral. They created it all. And I'm sure they are very attracted to the idea that, can you learn from these things? Can you experience these things? Can you learn from it? Can you look at yourself and laugh, or look at yourself and cry? Can you do these things? A lot of people did that, and it is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful how many people either relate or want to relate to the Loud House. Of course, each person have its opinion on the show. Some people don't like Lincoln at all. They think he compromised too much. Some people want Lincoln to be angry, to oppose his sisters. Some people want him to be more understanding toward his sisters or so. All of these things are beautiful beautiful in many ways. They are all beautiful. And as an artist, I think that potential is the greatest thing about the Loud House. Some people actually can relate more to Clyde. Some people can relate to Lincoln friends. Some people can relate more with Ronnie Ann, or so on and so on. I believe that perhaps the one thing about the Loud House, as well as maybe most of the fandom, not all of it, the problem in all of this is perhaps some lack of certain personalities and characters. There are people who are not dumb, but they are kind and sweet. There are people like that. They are not aggressive. They are not ideologically, should I say, extreme in any way. They are not. And they find it difficult to relate to the Loud House. Be it boys, girls, or not, it doesn't matter. There are people who can't relate to it. There are people who find the Loud House to be difficult to relate to because of the lack of these ideas. Maybe those people found their own way in the fandom, like they actually created stories that resonate with them better, but they most certainly are not the majority. And I honestly don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're up to, and I personally don't really care enough to demand that these things get presented. I'm curious about it, and I would like to see it. And maybe they themselves find themselves attracted to the show, but in a more like what they want it to be, what it is not, and they want it to be. So I find that to be very attractive about this show. People seek it, people want it. Some people want something different, some people want something that's pretty much the same, just in depth, and so on. And perhaps humor. humor, a lot of humor. People want humor. They want great humor, and they found the idea of a boy living in a house full of girls to be a setup of a great joke, and I can't blame them. It can be. But between all these genres, drama, comedy, daily life, slice of life, stuff like that, well, I suppose it's the same, slice of life and daily life. I guess that is the most attractive thing about the Loud House. And the fandom knows it, and they strive to create some more. How were your beginnings in the fandom? Well, I can't answer that question for a simple reason. I was never actually an active member of the fandom. At least, not as much as people think I do. I don't go to websites where the fans gather and talk to them or something like that. I don't do that. I don't go to the Loud House wiki and pretty much indulge there for too long. I don't always ask people about the Loud House or something. I'm not that much of a fan of the show. I mean, I like it. I'm kind of a fan of it, but I'm not part of the fandom specifically. Again, I did have my encounters with them, but for the most part, I'm not part of the fandom. At least not in the sense that people usually refer to it as. In a fun, again, don't get me wrong, but in a way, I'm kind of like a mercenary in this entire story. I am a guy people hire to do things for the Loud House fandom. People ask me to draw things, and I make it and everything. I guess you would call me the Deadpool of this whole thing. Yeah, but I'm just having fun here. You know what I mean? It's just I'm having fun in all of this. How was my beginning in it? There was none. There was no beginning or ending or anything. I was always just a distant associate with the fandom, but that's it really. I love a lot of shows. I watch a lot of shows. Well, not new shows though. The new shows, I have a problem with it. But for the most part, I enjoy a lot of cartoons. So I was never actually part of a specific fandom. The Loud House fandom did approach me many times, and they gave me a lot of positive comments on my artworks, and they asked me to draw some more, and some of my clients to this very day still ask me to draw more artworks of the Loud House. Of course, for the most part, it's their ideas, their requests. I don't think I remember the last time I did my own interpretation of the Loud House. Like, I didn't do my own ideas for the Loud House. Most of it is fandom approaching me and asking me to draw stuff for them, paying me to do it, asking me for these things, and I just do it anyway. Some ideas are good, some ideas are bad, some ideas I simply don't understand at all, so whatever it might be. So, if there's anything I could say about my relationship with the fandom, is that I think for the most part, their opinion of me is as divided as the fandom itself. Half of them hate me from the bottom of their heart for all the ideologies that I entertain, and the other half pretty much in love with what I make and want me to continue to make my works as colorful and as beautiful as they can be. So, what do I think of the fandom? Not that much. I mean, I'm glad they like my stuff, and to those who hate my stuff, there's nothing I can do. Haters gonna hate, you know. Just having fun here anyway. So, yeah, I don't really have much to say about that. There was no beginning, and if there is ever gonna be an ending, I don't know when or how it will be. One thing for sure, I have met the fandom, and they can always find me whenever they want. Apart from The Loud House, what other series have you liked? I liked a lot, actually. I liked a lot of series. I liked Invader Zim. I liked Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. I liked a lot of shows. Robot Boy, a little bit of Foster's Home, XJ9, My Life as a Teenage Robot, The Eds. Not that much, but I kinda liked it a little bit, at least as a humor. Tough question. I liked a lot of series. I guess I liked the golden age of Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. Before Nickelodeon became SpongeBob SquarePants Network, or Cartoon Network becoming the Adventure Time and Teen Titans Go Network or something like that. I don't know. I liked it before all these things happened. A regular show, Adventure Time, I watched them, but I didn't like them. How do I put it? I did like them at the beginning, but I didn't like them afterwards. Things just got really bad afterwards. And I like that era, the era before Adventure Time, as complicated as it might be. So I guess I did like the bumper sticker era, something like that. Bumper. They have a name for it. I don't remember. The bumper sticker era of Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon, much more diverse prior to SpongeBob SquarePants era. I did like them the best. So, tons and tons of TV shows. I can't say which one I like best. I guess if I have to rate the greatest two shows, I probably would go with either the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy as number one, and second is the Invader Zim. Those two, in my opinion, are the greatest two of them all, because they actually succeed in entertainment and give the audience a lot of laughs and a lot of cool visuals, as well as very amazing art. So, I guess that's my answer. Final farewell. What advice do you give future artists? Oh man, I have to give the greatest closing I can possibly give for that question. Well, we live in a really, really big world. A world of many things. A world of ideas, a world of materials, a world of beliefs, ideas, a world of possibilities, a world of many colors, and so on and so on. Our world is very big, and there's a lot to explore, a lot of ideas, even ideas that you might not like. There's a lot of things to go through. Some areas where people will forbid you from going, some concepts that people don't want you to know about, some art that some consider forbidden or so, some good things, some evil things. There's all kinds of things in this world. And there's a lot to explore, a lot to learn. So your journey as an artist will never be truly over. It will always continue, forevermore. You are not gonna stop at any point. Your learning will never be over. It will only get more complex, more detailed, more interesting. Sometimes even reach the point where it seems dull. But the end is never truly there. The end is never there at all. There are many artists in this world who lived and became old people who wanted to learn even more. They wanted to practice all kinds of art, all kinds of beautiful imagery they want to create. Writers who wanted to write the greatest stories. Dancers who want to make the greatest performance. The journey of an artist is never truly over. A lot to learn, and the potential is limitless. There are things to learn from art as well. Things for your own personal life, relationships, family, society, politics, and so much more. There's a lot to learn, a lot of things to experience, a lot of things to understand, a lot of evil to witness, a lot of mysteries to uncover, and finally, a lot of love to experience, a lot of it. If you want to be an artist or want to go through the whole thing, you're going to find yourself in front of a mountain of all kinds of things, ideas and lessons and so on. Go online, learn how to draw, find the right lessons, find the right tools, find your own style, or copy other styles if you want. It doesn't really matter. But your journey will never be over. You can have fun with it if you want. You could take it seriously. But never consider for one moment that there is an end to it, because there isn't. There will always be something more. And when that happens, and finally art just becomes a universe that stands next to your real life, when you reach that point, and your daily life becomes either a reflection of your art or vice versa, just remember one thing. Just remember one thing. If you failed the challenge of art, if you failed to understand what it all means or what it's supposed to lead you to, if you failed to do so, if you failed that, then you have a lot more to learn, a lot more to go through. Try to make your experience as great as possible. Try to find that great love that exists within art. Try to find it. And remember that your real life is it's not supposed to necessarily be intertwined with your art. It's not necessarily supposed to. It's your choice to decide how much it affected or how much it doesn't. But one thing for sure, your happiness, your sadness, or even your uncertainty will always be to some extent reflected in your own art. And that's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It is, however, something that a lot of people would like to see, would like to experience in your art. So don't be shy to share with the world something as beautiful as real and honest emotions. I guess that's the last thing I could say on the matter.